Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Now, if you're listening to the show and you heard us talking about Baghdadi and how he was essentially captured and killed over the weekend, and you're saying, okay, I need to Google that and look up a little bit of that online. If you go to look at Wikipedia, don't be confused. Lots of Baghdadis.
So, you'll find more than one Baghdadi,
yes,
huh?
There are a lot of them. I'm trying to narrow it down, but...
Well, Pat, did you look up the name Al-Baghdadi? It means from Baghdad, doesn't it?
Yes, and I couldn't even begin to pronounce his
other names.
His other name before Baghdadi.
Yeah, because he had some others when he was.
Yes, so I'm trying.
We had him in a prison camp back in 2009.
Right.
Yeah, and then we released him. Apparently, bad move.
Which scares me about all those that were released recently or got out.
Yeah,
and that's what you worry about is somebody else is going to take the reins.
Right.
Naturally.
Right. Well, what we don't know,
the ISIS reigns.
There's some stuff dribbling out about how we may have gotten the information about where he was. I'm not convinced that information is accurate. I just don't know. It could be a little bit of cover. I do think that it's interesting to note the timing, right? Because we just had the pullout. And I remember when we pulled out of Syria, it was like 50 special operations troops that pulled out who were supporting the Kurds. And to let Turkey come in and apparently, maybe obliterate the Kurds. I mean, we don't really know what's going on there right now. Seems like the situation has calmed down. And if you remember, President Trump sent that letter to President Erdogan where he said, don't be a fool, don't be a tough guy, and then there was some back and forth in the media. Of course, we don't know the truth of any of this. We don't know if Erdogan really threw that letter in the trash can, as the media told us. Or whether he took it seriously. And we just don't know what happened. But I do think it's interesting that we move our troops out, we let Turkey come in, and then magically we find al-Baghdadi a couple of weeks later. Mm-hmm. And it could be, and if you start digging into the web on this, you'll find some of the information that I'm thinking of. It could be that Turkey was actually working a lot more closely with ISIS than we realize. To coordinate, to hide them, to use them, because remember, Turkey wants to destabilize northern Syria so that they could invade. They also are opposed to the Assad government, which is being propped up essentially by the Russians now. But Turkey wants to be in charge of the whole of Islam. Mm-hmm. They want to be the renewed Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks, and in charge of all of Islam. But they're having a hard time getting there because Saudi Arabia is already kind of in charge of Islam, having the holiest sites there in Saudi Arabia. And you've got Iran, which is also trying to gain supremacy. So you've got all these people competing to be the top nation in the Muslim world. And Turkey's playing in that game. But so was Turkey involved with ISIS? I mean, there's certainly some photographs out there that you can find on the internet that seem to show Turkish forces at least meeting with ISIS people. Now, we don't know what the basis of those meetings were, but was there some kind of coordination going on? I don't know. So my question would be, was Baghdadi essentially turned over to us in exchange for us letting Turkey come into northern Syria as they wanted to do? And we did that by moving our troops out of the way, our 50 or so troops that they moved out of the way. So it wasn't a lot of people. And I just think that's an interesting thought, is what made Turkey have had to do with this? And we don't know at this point. And I could see them telling us, well, it was the courier that was captured, and we also got one of Baghdadi's wives, and they're the ones that gave us the information. Oh, and by the way, the CIA was already involved with looking for Baghdadi. They were getting tips back in the summer. I mean, all these news stories are coming out, but is that just chaff to throw off, kind of the obvious story, to throw people off of looking more closely at the obvious story, which is that maybe Turkey gave us this information in exchange for us getting out of their way in northern Syria? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very possible. If you look at the location of the village that Baghdadi was staying in, I mean, it's right across the border from Turkey.
3 miles.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really close. Now, he must be awfully comfortable that the Turks aren't trying to get into Syria and kill him, because the Turks, they have a real army. They have a real serious army. They got a great special forces.
And where he was at was on the smuggler's route. It was right on the route where they smuggle them in and out.
Yeah. So, to think that Turkey didn't know where he was, I think is probably a little bit naive, being that close to their border. I remember they have
of Pakistan. Remember, like Pakistan didn't know.
Yeah, right. Where Osama. Yeah,
right.
I didn't believe that. I'm sorry. Right. I know I come in with a lot of these things that I don't believe the mainstream media story on things. But look, I'm not stupid, okay? And they think everybody out there is stupid. That's what they think. You guys and me and Roxanne, you and Pat, they think we're all stupid, and they could just pull the wool over our eyes and tell us whatever they want to tell us, and we'll just lap it up, And I tend to look at things with a little bit more jaundiced eye. And so I never bought that the Pakistanis didn't know exactly where bin Laden was. I mean, wasn't he right next to one of their military academies? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, come on. Sell me something that I might want to actually buy.
Question for us, just a hypothetical question. Now, what happened to al-Baghdadi's kids?
Well, we know 3 of them it looks like, blown into oblivion.
But then there were 11 that were taken somewhere else.
But I don't know if those were his kids or not. That wasn't made clear.
Okay.
Right. That wasn't made clear in the news stories because I kind of tried to look at that. And what I got from it was that Baghdadi took his 3 kids with him.
Right.
So I don't know if that was meant to say that the other 11 were children of other people that lived in that compound.
Okay.
Because it was a compound that was owned by a guy who was kind of like a leader of a competing but very similar radical Islamic sect.
I see.
So it really wasn't competing with ISIS, but it was another brand of, the Al-Qaeda, ISIS, al-Nusra, all those groups that are operating essentially in the same way. And for our purposes, it might as well all be the same group as far as I'm concerned.
I searched. I think we gave him that name maybe.
From the Baghdad.
I think we gave him that name.
Yeah. Well, we might have.
2 of the women also that were in that compound, they were shot and killed, and they had their terrorist vests on.
Yes.
Wow.
They didn't go off.
Can you imagine a lifestyle where you're wearing those vests all the time? Just ready.
Those were his 2 wives.
I didn't want to say that. I thought that was what
they
they
were
said.
al-Baghdadi's 2 wives.
His 2 wives.
But I tell you, you look at the mainstream media, and all it's been is criticism of Trump about this. I mean, on Face the Nation, which is just such a really low-end program as far as I'm concerned. But Face the Nation, they had on Mike Morrell, former CIA. I think he was a deputy director and then maybe an interim director a couple of times under President Obama, and he had a lot of comments. He said, you don't want a locker room kind of feel to this. That was the one thing we worked really hard on after the bin Laden raid is don't make those kind of statements because it does inspire other people. You know what? I'm sorry. Again, go back to this idea of Stockholm Syndrome. First of all, I don't think anything President Trump said is going to inspire other people. I mean, I think what Morrell was probably referring to was where President Trump said that Baghdadi was whimpering and crying as he ran down the tunnel. And it is somewhat hard to imagine exactly how President Trump would have known that kind of detail. But, maybe they've got these little micro drones. I mean, we just don't know what their technology is. I mean, I think it's just amazing that they can sit in the Situation Room in Washington, D.C., and watch live this raid happen. I know we've seen that in the movies before, but still, you got to think about the technology to connect those 2 parts of the world. I mean, how do you get the signal out? What's the quality of the signal? And what can they really see? Can they see video? I mean, maybe most of these soldiers have body cams on now, where they can, see the live video and switch from soldier to soldier. I don't know. But, one does wonder how he knew he was whimpering and crying all the way to the end. And maybe that was President Trump taking just a little bit of license with the story. I don't know. He tends to do that. But you know what? He tells a compelling and enjoyable story. But all of that aside, I'm sorry, but I don't think that these people are deserving of respect. So I'm not one to want to disrespect, dead bodies and things like that or disrespect people's names. But this guy in particular, what respect did he ever give to anybody else? What respect did he ever give to those people that he killed, that he lit on fire, that he, that he had people behead? Those people didn't
put it out there.
Oh, God, and put the videos out there, the videos of their deaths. I mean, he gave no respect. He and his group gave no respect to other people. And I think if you don't give respect, then you don't get respect. You don't deserve it. And I'm sorry, but the first thing I'm thinking is not, oh, gosh, President Trump shouldn't have said that. He stepped over a line. Give me a break. This is a big moment. How about you just be happy that we got this bad guy, that, we probably seriously have destabilized the organization. I know they've appointed a new leader, but a lot of times these things are a cult of personality. Mm-hmm. And in this case in particular, he was a very compelling personality, apparently, to the kind of people who were interested in the message that he was giving. He was they call him a preacher. He was a public speaker, an orator, a very compelling guy.
We're talking about Baghdadi?
Yes. Baghdadi, yeah.
At times they said he was like inaudible. You couldn't even understand in his beginning years. So he must have advanced. But I'll tell you who's really happy about this, the Foley family.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And didn't, I think the mother said, she thanked the decisiveness of President Trump.
Exactly.
And of course, as we've heard this in the media, all these decisions look very obvious in hindsight. But, all we got to do is look back to the Jimmy Carter years and the Delta Force raid on the Iranian embassy, if you remember that, that didn't go so well, where we had one of the helicopters suck some sand up into the engine and wound up crashing. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. So, the idea that this was going to work just like we planned it is not guaranteed. Now that it's over with, it's beautiful that everything got pulled off just like it was planned. But that was not guaranteed. Other people on Face the Nation also criticizing the president, retired Admiral James Winfield. Now, these are Obama loyalists. That's who these are. These are people who served in the Obama administration, and they like the way Barack Obama did it. They think that we should have given Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi a full Islamic funeral. Excuse me, why? Why? This guy isn't due any respect. I mean, do even Muslims want him respected? I mean, I think there's probably a lot of Muslims who would say, look,
what funeral? He buried himself.
Exactly, Pat, exactly. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.